In a quiet village, nestled between mountains and forests, there lived a man named Bryan, who spent his days working in the fields, his hands deep in the earth, his heart often burdened by worries about money. Despite his hard work and modest lifestyle, he could never seem to make ends meet. Every coin he earned seemed to vanish like mist under the morning sun. Frustrated and tired, Bryan began to see money as a cruel master, a force that ruled the world with indifference. One evening, while walking through the forest to clear his mind, Bryan stumbled upon an elderly woman tending to a small garden in a clearing. Though they never exchanged words, something in her presence felt calming, almost magnetic. He returned to that spot often, and over time he noticed something unusual. The woman never seemed to worry. Her clothes were simple, her garden modest, and yet she moved with a grace and joy that made her appear untouched by scarcity. Bryan began to observe her closely. He noticed how she nurtured her plants with love, how she moved with purpose, and how she treated every seed and stone as though it held meaning. She gave with no expectation and received with gratitude, and it dawned on him that she lived by a rhythm deeper than mere survival. Something in her energy was different, open, flowing, abundant. He began to wonder if he had misunderstood money all his life. Maybe it wasn't the enemy he believed it to be. Maybe it wasn't even about the paper or the numbers. He started to see money not as an object to chase or hoard, but as a mirror to his own state of being. When he lived in fear, money seemed to... When he lived in trust, giving generously even when he had little, something always returned to him, maybe not immediately, and not always in the form he expected, but the flow never stopped entirely. As the seasons passed, Bryan changed. He began treating his daily work not as a chore, but as a contribution to the greater harmony of life. He stopped counting his coins with anxiety, and instead began giving small portions to others who had even less. To his surprise, his needs began to be met in new and unexpected ways. A neighbor repaid an old favor. A traveler offered a day's help in the fields. The harvests grew stronger, slowly but steadily, his life filled with ease. He realized then that everything in the universe operated like a current of energy, including money. It was not meant to be stored and locked away, but to be allowed to move freely, just as wind dances through trees or rivers carve paths through stone. When aligned with gratitude, trust, and purpose, the flow of this energy responded, like a melody harmonizing with its singer. By the time Bryan had grown old, he was no longer the man who feared lack. He had no great treasures to boast of, but he had something rarer, peace. And those who knew him came to understand, even if only intuitively, that his wealth had little to do with what he owned, and everything to do with how he lived. Through him, they saw that money, like all forms of energy, flows best through those who trust its rhythm, and release the need to control it. Like and comment if you could relate with this story. Subscribe.